I saw so much fear in the business world, that this fear of trying to create something new on the fringe or the edge of a company. We're taking these highly depthful humans that have so much to learn about themselves, and we're putting them in this box and measuring their performance on these things that really don't matter at a soul level. And I think that's why I've always had a passion for design and business. It's really never been about the products, but it's been about the beauty of transformation of people. And I think it's what I've seen in myself.
Welcome to Mission Activated, where we bring you the stories of individuals who've awakened to their true purpose and are living a life of passion, impact, and alignment. I'm Aveline Clarke, your host, and I believe that when you're on mission, everything falls into place. Here, we share the journeys of those who've discovered their unique path and embraced their soul's calling. It's not just about making money in life and in business, it's about making a difference, living on purpose, and inspiring yourself and others along the way. Let's get to it. My next guest is Jon Kohrs. He is a design coach, consultant, and teacher. He helps organizational teams at the brink work in a whole new way. He uses the Enneagram, and through that, he helps teams unlearn the old ways of working by relearning new ways of being. Within his life, a paradox has existed. Two sides always competing and unable to integrate as one. He continues to live into it, facing his own dualistic nature by being unapologetically authentic in how we love one another and ourselves as human beings. Jon has just gotten back from a 2-week trip to Mongolia, which I hope he talks about in this conversation. And he is famous for having a very cool house that his kids think is very unique and like living in a different world. He's going to talk more about a book that he's just written. And what I love about Jon is his ability to go beneath the surface of the experience of life and humanity and language it in a way that is very expressive, translucent, and real. I invite you to sit back and enjoy this conversation with Jon Kohrs. Well, hello, Jon. Thank you so much for joining me on the podcast. I am so excited to have you here today. Welcome.
Thank you very much. It's an honor to be on your podcast. I've listened to so many episodes, just hearing so much about passion and genius and purpose in the business world. I'm just really excited to have a conversation with you tonight. My time, today, your time. So.
Well, thank you so much. I am excited as well. For the listeners' benefit, this is Jon Kohrs, and as you can tell, he's in a different time zone. Jon, whereabouts are you in the world?
I am in the middle of the United States, Kansas City.
Okay, I've never been there. I'm just picturing the US and a dot somewhere in the middle.
Yeah. Point right to the center, and you're going to be pretty close. So it is. It's just nighttime here. So
thank you. So you know what I love to talk about and what the purpose of this podcast is. So now it's time for us to get to know you. And I would invite you now to take us on a journey, please, or share with us the journey, that you've been on. So just like we're sitting in the 100-acre wood with Pooh and his friends, and he opens up the storybook, we're going to sit down, and I'd love you to share with us this story.
Yeah, starting with once upon a time in a land far, far away, there was a little boy named Jon. Probably start from the very beginning. I would say was born on a small little farm in the United States to two PhD therapists that did a clinical practice about an hour drive. So they drove an hour to their own work environment. They did that every day for years upon years. And then they came home and were on a farm. So I always said they were doubly entrepreneurs, both in this impact business of trying to give back through therapy, but also trying to raise a farm and two kids. So I think in my upbringing, there's a lot of this kind of psychotherapy and analysis and psychology was always around. So there's that part that's in me. but there's a lot of music and artistry in my family. So there was definitely a lot of that as well. And then there was this business component of seeing my two parents, how do you manage risk and try to create impact and abundance for yourself and do the things you want to do. So I think that those three things really shaped me a lot. And so, but when I got in the business world, it was very much through a design lens, through an art lens. It was designing websites and products and services for the U.S. Central Bank in the early 2000s. That parlayed into a lot of different design and innovation projects, and was always kind of a team lead or a manager, or some type of a role where I was leading a team to some purpose. I think as that evolved, my view of design and artistry and psychology and business started to evolve as I got into more of a consulting role, and started to coach different companies on how to lead and how to design and how to, co-create with one another. And I saw so much fear in the business world, that this fear of trying to create something new on the fringe or the edge of a company. This business world provides this amazing container for people to really go to these places of fear on the outside that really bring up this fear on the inside. And how do you really work with that? And I think the danger I saw at the time is, when we have these shadow behaviors we're not really seeing in ourselves when we face the fear, it actually gets designed into the products and services we use every day. Um, so I think in that, I started to see maybe, a different purpose for myself in business, and a different purpose for design, a different purpose for psychology, and maybe even a different purpose for what business really does for our society. I think since then, I've really shifted into, coaching leaders, coaching teams, but really going deeper into how do we hold the space of inner work and vulnerability, and really seeing each other as humans as we're in this work environment, and how do we see the transformations that are happening, especially when you're on the edge trying to create something new to, I think the buzzword, disrupt your business, or disrupt some market space. So um, that's where I came to. In that process, I found a love and a new purpose of writing, and exploring kind of my own transformation and trying to put words on that. So I think my life and purpose in business and in my own life has evolved rapidly from where I started as a small kid with, two PhD shrinks looking at ink blot tests at dinner every night. So
Wow, there's a lot in there, Jon. Did you find it frustrating as a kid? First of all, I want to go back to, being raised by two PhD therapist parents. What do they give you apart from the ink blot tests? Was it frustrating, as a kid in that environment?
I don't think I knew any different. Uh, and I don't know if I really saw the psychology and the psychoanalysis and all those things on a day-to-day basis. I think they were so busy struggling and trying to make ends meet and trying to make their life work. And I think I just saw stress and anxiety and tension so much, to be honest. And as an empath in those days, there was a lot of absorbing of all that energy of what was happening. And I think even that shaped me to a degree, but I really didn't know any different. I think it was kind of almost being in the marinade of that. I think now I look back at some of the things they did, or the books they were reading, or their library that they had. And my father was exploring religion and spirituality and philosophy. And I remember as a kid looking at all this stuff thinking, who reads this stuff? But now I'm just obsessed by it. I think I was lucky to be born into that environment. So.
Mm, mm. Do you think that the way that your parents approached general topics, life, and day-to-day concerns, and the way that they looked into things on a deeper level, do you think that helped shape the way that you also look at things and question things?
I think so. I remember being in restaurants, and my father, this kind of common story in our family, he would pick somebody out in the restaurant, and he would say, how much can you know about this person just by looking at them? We'd play a game, and he would always nail the person. It's like he had this uncanny sense of being able to see somebody and just feel what's going on in their life. And I think I either inherited that or learned that from him. Um, but I think there's this beauty I see in people, and I think there's a deep appreciation for everything that's happening underneath the surface and inside of them that maybe they're unconscious to. And how do we really, really see who people are? Um, I think that was amplified being in the business world for so long. I think there is this sense of inauthenticity. It's, I've got to conform to these values and this other mission, and I've got to really play this role that's really defined on a piece of paper for me, and I have to fit in the team in a very specific way, and everything is already set. I just have to, contort myself into this square so that I can fit perfectly into this Tetris game that I'm in. Um, and you know, the more I see business, the more I feel sad for that. It's we're taking these highly depthful humans that have so much to learn about themselves, and we're putting them in this box and measuring their performance on these things that really don't matter at a soul level. And how do we rethink of business as a way that actually adapts to the individuatedness of each person? And I see that path. I mean, I see things moving that direction, but um, I just think there's so much more to people and so much more purpose they can reveal in their business settings.
Ah, I couldn't agree more. I was talking with someone this morning about a very similar topic, and just exactly what you're saying. That people come into business, and it could be their own business. It doesn't have to be a corporate or another company. But we come in and we take on these roles, whether we're paid to take on a role, we wear a particular cap, have a label. Even in our own business, I think we, generally speaking, that's what people do because we have not been invited to explore and be brave enough to bring ourselves to that business and run the business in our particular way instead of the way that is expected or what the norm is or what we see other people doing. Would you agree?
Absolutely. I think there's so much kind of borrowing in business of uh, here's the norms we should have because this is how business is run. And I do see there's an edge of a radically different, disruptive way of how to run a business that's more purpose oriented to each individual. But it's scary to go to those places. There's more risk. There's more emotion. I was just in a conversation around like the future of behavioral health in business, and um, being trained in the Enneagram, I really look at how much are people displaying sadness, anger, fear, and joy. And can you really feel the full experience of those four emotions throughout your life? And how is that okay in a business world? Anger is not something that there's really good containers for in the business world. But anger is so important at creating boundaries and in finding the truth and cutting through things that aren't working. But what are these acceptable forms of these four emotions? And how do we allow more expression and holding and work through what's really happening in the business world? I just don't think we have a sense for what the structures and systems and architecture of a business is that facilitates that in a way that protects both the business and the employee. So,
Mm, mm. And is that the kind of area that you are continuing to, put your energy and focus on into so that you can help to shape a more, in uniquely individual, purpose-led business?
yeah, I think absolutely, in my work on the business side, it's very much into how do we help businesses find disruptive growth, and oftentimes that is a brand new service or product or something they want to bring into the world. And those leaders have to go against the grain. They have to find a brand new way to build some of these services, especially in the healthcare world. Um, and with this, there's a confrontation with their own fear of who are they and what are these things coming up and what is my role and what do I really want to do. As much transformations are creating for the business on the outside, the same thing is happening inside to many of these leaders. And
Mm,
I think my big passion is how do we hold that? How do we hold this inner growth at the same time we see business growth? And how is there that level of trust that you can really be next to someone or a team as they're trying to figure out who they really are? And part of that is letting go of a lot of identities that didn't serve them in the past. And that can be really scary in business because you don't feel as valuable or as needed potentially. I think that's one pattern I see in the work I do.
What you just said then is a very dramatically different way of, I guess, investing in employees, if we're looking at a business with employees, than what I've experienced and what I see businesses doing today. I mean, imagine us, taking individuals through a process where they actually had to look at themselves and what labels and identities they're carrying that don't serve them. It sounds like it's very much a let's focus on each person, help them to become clearer about who they truly are and let go of who they're not. And therein, the collective, once the collective have gone through that process, the business, which is the collective, right, the container of all the people, will suddenly be operating and expressing and feeling itself in a much different way. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
Ideally, yes, but I think that's a very messy process too. I think whenever you disrupt something that has been in homeostasis for so long, there's a faction that wants to protect that and believes that it may disrupt themselves too much, uh, and they may not want to go into that fear. You have another part that maybe embraces the fear and goes into it. So I think that's where it gets messy as how does the growth of business how does that transform at the same time leaders are transforming at the same point the organization is transforming at the same time. I think I mean we can go deeper into this if you want, but spiral dynamics, some of Claire Graves's work, for those who follow, I think give good maps in like what is the conscious state of a business or an organization, and how do we think about the individual leaders and people. How does that really fit into the totality of where the company's going?
Absolutely. Now, we could talk for another hour just on this little mini topic here. But I'd love to go back and ask, was there a point in your own journey where you realized that the way things were being run in the business wasn't actually bringing out the best in you, and perhaps you were holding on to identities that were placed upon you or expectations were placed upon you that weren't yours or weren't serving you? And what was that moment that you realized that?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. Hey, for those that maybe understand the Enneagram as your listeners in the business world, very much identify with an Enneagram 9. So I would say my capacity to be a chameleon and blend into any organization and be what the organization needs me to be, it's not the fault of maybe the organization, but the fault of my own in a fear of abandonment, and maybe not being accepted unless I played a certain role. So, I mean, that made me an incredible consultant. I could build relationships quickly. Most of my clients would always say, it's like you've worked here your entire life. We trust you immediately. You know exactly what to say. That's a really hard pattern to break, because it's very valued both in the business world and in the consulting world. And to be an individual person that is not actually the same as the culture, it's very different than how he or she is portraying themselves, uh, is a very, very scary thing. Uh, I think that's happened as I've gotten in more in the consulting world and found more of my grounded purpose of like, who am I and why am I really here? I think that story is a little different than the business story I went through at the beginning. I think that's been more of my personal journey and a lot of changes and transformation and pain that I went through in that world that is now kind of colliding with the business world more.
You mentioned there your purpose. How clearly can you articulate your purpose at the moment in life?
Yeah. and I always get this question of, even in the business world, what is your purpose? What is your purpose? What is your purpose? And, everybody tries to figure it out to find this ground that they can anchor themselves in and clearly articulate it. And for me, I found it doesn't change. It just evolves like wine. It's like it just gets simpler, but more complicated. It's so salient, but every year it feels like my purpose, the unconsciousness of it comes into a way that I think, well, that's remarkable how all of this fit together. I would have never imagined it. I'd say my purpose right now is to write humanity in a way that we can really see the love behind it. It's so much. If I could boil it down into one word, it would be love. And I know we hear that a lot in the spiritual business world. It's all about love. I think there's lots of gradients of that within my purpose. But I think love to me is, how does each person fully exist as who they are? And what are the mechanisms of love that support that? And I think as I've gone through the business world, a lot of the design and product work and almost the artistry that I was taught in the business world has really been about just how do I write and how do I express? And I think all that work is going into maybe the next phase, which is how do I write fascinating stories about humanity that we can really understand what love really is? So that is where my purpose is right now.
Do you have a muse?
Do I have a muse? Oh, for my stories? The book I'm working on that I'm publishing in January, I would say that the muses were a lot of romantic relationships. We're kind of going into a very non-business part of the conversation, but they very much was these relationships I had after I got divorced and the 3 kids. And I just went through relationship after relationship and learned a lot about love and myself, and also business through that. And they were my muse of sorts, I think. They allowed me to kind of understand something much more deeply.
If you're loving this conversation and want to dive deeper into purposeful work, then it's time to thank the 6-Star Leaders community for making this episode possible. The 6-Star Leaders are a group of purpose-driven business owners committed to doing business differently by embracing their unique genius and skills to make a real impact. It's a space for learning, growth, and truly becoming empowered in everything that you do. If you're ready to discover your own 6th star, go to bit.ly/6-star community-intro and book a chat to learn more. We look forward to seeing you. You said then we're going off the business topic, and this makes me laugh because it's only been probably in the last maybe 12 months that I've fully accepted and understood how enmeshed we are. We are our business, okay? And this is my belief and what I see and experience. We're not separate from it. And when I got this notion, I stopped trying to separate out the worlds. So when I was talking with people in the community or on the podcast and sharing things, I would often come with as if the business was in the box and there was a wall between the business and Aveline. But in fact, Aveline is the business. So by you sharing that you went through a divorce and you've got 3 kids and you had these romantic relationships, that's actually part of you. This is how you can, because we're humans. People don't want to hear about my business. They want to hear about me. People don't want to hear just about the things that you do in your business. Yes, it's interesting, but tell me why. Tell me how you got there. I want to know that stuff. And when I fully understood that, I pulled that wall down as much as I could at the time. And I think I'm still pulling the wall down because habitually I've kept the worlds separate.
Mm-hmm.
How do you respond to that? Like, is that something that you also feel or understand, believe?
I could not agree with you more. And I would love to hear, and I'll share mine, but I'd love to hear what is the word or the description of the intersection of that? Like, how did it really come together where it wasn't a paradox anymore?
Right. It was actually from one of our community members, and she's in the States, and she's been trained by the three indigenous tribes, elder tribes throughout the world on consciousness. And she said it to me one day, and it's just very simple language. And she said, "You can't separate the two. You know who you are and your business is, because you actually are who you are is in your business. It's part of the two." And she just said it really simply, and I went away from that conversation, and that was just one line in a much bigger conversation. So after processing it, and I think just processing, feeling into it, going, what does that mean? How do I separate the two? Then just that self-reflection, asking questions, and it went from there. Hmm.
Yeah. I think that's lovely. Thank you for sharing. Beauty is a word that comes to mind. Artistry, transformation. If I could boil down the words that speak to me, both from the business and the personal, or even the business and the spiritual, it'd be those words. So for me, I think getting divorced um, and part of that divorce came from this longing for love inside myself that led me into relationships I shouldn't have been having. And that led me to wandering in the woods and going to Peru and studying shamanism and going to all parts of the world and going to Sedona and leading spiritual retreats and going to Mount Shasta and talking to a mountain to try to figure out who I was, while doing all this business work that people would probably never ever even realize I was doing a lot of that. I was having this transformation experience trying to figure out who in the world I was. And these romantic relationships always seemed to the pain of it and the draw of them always seemed to lead me closer into who I was. And I think within that personal story, there's so much of this capacity to see the beauty in what was happening, even through all the work and all the pain of what was happening. I think there was also this transformation that was happening, and this artistic expression of in drawing and in writing this book that I'm publishing. Um, there was so much of all those pieces coming, and I realized that's what I've been doing in the business world. Um, I've been trying to transform products and services into something new. I've always been in a design capacity, very, very particular about the beauty of the product that we're pushing out. I was always in a user experience or customer experience strategy role, um, and I love this artistry and awareness of who people are. I just love to see teams create and see their own transformation in that process. And I realized both these things were one and the same. What I was doing in my personal life, in almost an essence of who I was, is what I was trying to be part of in the business world. And I think in that everything stopped competing with each other. It wasn't like in the business world I had to be this version of Jon, and in the personal world I got to be this version. I could stand on the tenets of those three items: beauty, artistry, transformation. And I think it's very much what this book that I wrote is really about. It's not a business book, but it's about transformation and what does it mean to be spiritual and be a human being, and what is love, and how do you find that in yourself? And I think the essence of the book is how do you reparent yourself, and how do you find the father inside yourself that can really hold yourself in a place of safety when you feel that fear. And Although those may seem very different in the business world, I think it's one and the same. It's how do we go on these artistic transformations through business, and how do we see the full existence of each other in that process? Um, and I think that's why I've always had a passion for design and business. It's really never been about the products, but it's been about the beauty of transformation of people. And I think that's what I've seen in myself. And I think that's a every week and every month, I continue to change and transform. And I think that's what makes us human.
I was just about to ask you about the journey of evolution, and you just said there in the last few words, you continue to change and transform. Do you believe that us as humans need to continually be open to transforming and evolving ourselves? And does that then impact how we show up in our business?
I think absolutely. I think our outside world mirrors very much what individually we're trying to process. It's like our psyche is casting this movie out for us to watch to remind us of what's happening inside. And if I look at the world today, especially the business world, I've never known a period of greater transformation and greater fear and greater uncertainty. And I think if that movie we're all watching is a product of this collective internal um, question we're trying to get answered, I think I think that this is a profound moment. That's a Renaissance moment of transformation inside and outside. Um, and I do think we as people are trying to find new ways of doing things and trying to figure out who we are. Um, that would be that would be my answer for I think what's happening.
If you had the ability to talk to all the business owners around the world and deliver them a message or some advice, and let's just imagine that they all knew who you were,
Mm.
and you had an opportunity to I won't say stand at the pulpit, but it's more of a you got to deliver a message to them. What would that be at this point?
Yeah, I think I'd ask them a question and say, what if you could dramatically improve the results your business gets? But to do that, you had to think about your employees and who they really are in a radically different way. Would you take that risk? Would you take that risk? And I think it opens the door to say, where is the connection between completely disrupting my business and creating growth that people haven't seen? And how do I really rethink uh, the people that are deciding to consciously choose this business? And how do I see them in a really different way? Um, I think for those businesses that would say yes, I think there's a an absolute path for that to happen, and to support individual transformation uh, of the people that are working with you as much as the business itself.
And is this part of the work that you do with companies? And have you seen that the businesses transform as a result of asking those questions and going down that path?
Yeah, I've always seen the seed. I'm always there in the beginning with the how do we find a leader that wants to disrupt something and create new growth, and that carries that flag. And I've seen almost the wake of what that um, journey into purpose and transformation looks like for them, their teams, and then eventually how the organization starts looking at something and looking at it, hearing a story, and starting to believe that, ooh, there might be a different way. And I think those stories that very much uh, carry the business into a different way of thinking about things.
What's been the most exciting transformation that you've seen so far with a business using this kind of approach?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. You know, the thing I love the most is using tools like the Enneagram into once you start seeing results from people knowing each other more and understanding more deeply who they are and why they behave the way they do, um, how much that shifts the camaraderie and connection and resilience and dedication and humanity that's in a team. And I look very much at that team level, not as at the organization at large, but I see people that are just happier. I see people that like coming to work. I see people that spend time actually talking with one another. I see people that take an interest in, hey, I just got triggered by this person. Oh, hey, this is reminding me of something else that happened. Ooh, how do I approach this in a different way? Okay, who are they? There's much more of a real caring of people in business, and I think those are the changes that I see that make me really excited.
Do you think that's something that people in their own businesses can also adopt?
Oh, absolutely. I do think anybody with a team that's trying to do something new can adopt these practices. It's I don't think there's a special sauce for it. And I think in the business world we've labeled things like there's 100 different team building models, and in the design space there's design thinking and user centered design, and there's always approaches of how do you get a team to co-create and connect with one another. But I think there's some really simple ways of slowing down, having frameworks where you really start listening and understanding where people are really coming from at a much deeper layer. Uh, and I think just like the book and my personal story, it was me trying to be as conscious as I can. And there's still things I need to understand about myself. But when I took that personal journey, trying to figure out why I made all the decisions I did in my life, um, I started to really look at the beauty of all these things that are part of me. And I think when an organization can see their teams and their employees and each other in that way, I think that opens up the door to this. So I don't think there's a special process or a secret sauce. I think it's almost a heart set uh, that you have of how can you see yourself and your purpose and your artistry and your transformation enables you to see others in that way.
Mm, thank you. That's great. I'm thinking of our listeners and those in particular who might have their own business. Maybe they've got small teams and might be thinking, hang on, I work so hard. I'm working 40, 50 hours in my business, maybe 60 hours. I'm really busy. I've got a family as well. I'm trying to pay the bills. And I'm listening to this guy, Jon, talk with Aveline, and I'm like, what do you mean I've got to do this inner transformation work? What the hell? I've got all these business plans. I've got my business structured really nicely. I've got my routine. I've got this. Why should I do that? Hang on, how's that going to improve it? I'm just thinking at this point there might be a little bit of resistance and some confusion and questioning going, why do I need this? Or do I need this? Hang on, what am I missing? So a number of different questions. How would you respond to that person?
Yeah, I would say it's already happening. Like, you think there might not be a transformation that's happening, and this is an extra thing. I would say let's sit down and talk. And I would, if you really understood your story, and I know many of these business owners and leaders do, they'd probably be the first to tell you that their roles and what they face in their business is probably transforming them today and has been a source of their transformation. And if not, I would say, let's look at how much are you trying to make ends meet while you have a family, while you're exhausted, and you're trying to be valuable to so many people, and you're just not enjoying life anymore. And you think this is one extra thing. Maybe this is the catalyst for your transformation. Like, where is the value inside of you beyond trying to be valuable and create value for so many other people? And uh, I think every resistance we find in business is a mirror back to ourselves of what is the transformational journey we maybe need to look at.
Perfect. I couldn't agree more. And what I've come to see is that our environment around us, and that could be our teams, our business partners, our clients, families. The environment gives us clues and feedback all the time about ourselves. So we should know in here if something's not working, if there's a new way, we've got to look at something. And I see it as life showing you the path. You know, if you imagine we're all on a path and it's a bit of a windy path, it might have a different shape, like width or material, but it's a path nonetheless. It's not straight, it's not flat. And the clues are all around us in the environment of which way that path is angling next. And if we need to go into the forest, into a bit of a canopy and go in there and with some mirrors around so we actually look at ourselves, that's where we've got to go. And it feels to me like more people are seeing the need for this. And maybe COVID, that period, was a catalyst in this looking within, looking at ourselves, looking at our business. What do we really value? What do we want? And perhaps given now the number of years since we had our lockdowns, people are starting to, recover energetically and from all of that, because it was quite a taxing time. And now it's this space of, well, what do I want to create into the future? And I feel we're in this space.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, I think that's very well said. I think there's also such an opportunity in COVID to have some space to decide what feels good and what do I really want, and what's holding me back from that. I think one example, I think is starting to unwind, is a little bit of the work from anywhere, travel, and kind of shift my location completely. And so I think some of those are getting called back with return to office. I don't want to say mandates, but I think some employees may feel that way. But it was still this space where people could feel a little bit more free to be themselves, and and whether that journey took them closer to their purpose, or whether it was something that was pent up, like there's a reason for that disruption in our environment that allowed so many new things to happen. Um, I think with that, maybe there's a remembrance of some of these things might be taken away today. Um, but there's this return of, what do I really want? What really feels good to me now that I've had a shift? And I mean, I'm very open to more events like that happening, where people can really start to challenge their own status quos that they've borrowed from the world, that they've falsely believed this is the way things have to be.
I love the way you described that. And you touched on something again that I wanted to ask you, and that was about passion, doing the things that you love. And at what point in your journey did you realize, I need to be doing the things that I love, rather than continuing to live out the things I borrowed from the world or other people?
Yeah. And so, a great question. It's so hard to know what really is the heart's calling until you can get maybe out of your body and have some perspective. Maybe just like when you were asking me about growing up with my PhD therapist, what was it like? And it's like, this is just what it was like. And I think so often we get in our bodies and we're in our hearts and we're like, this is just what it's like. And I think tools like the Enneagram, and going on spiritual retreats, and getting outside my body and having radically different perspectives. I mean, even just coming back from Mongolia and traveling around the country for 2 weeks, engaging in a nomadic life, learning the shamanic values of Mongolia. Things like that even get me in touch with the passion of my heart, because it's so different than what I'm used to here in America, or in a corporate setting. So to answer your question, where I've kind of arrived at what is the passion, I'd say there's two functions of the heart. There's one that's maybe in personality, that's pretending, and then there's a true higher purpose of the heart. And the Enneagram would give me this language, but I would say I had so much sloth, where so much of my heart was about giving and being in a role with other people that I felt like they needed me to be. And I was great at pretending, and that felt so good because I would always get connected with, and I would never get abandoned because you know I could just follow everybody else's purpose. And so many times in my life, I've gotten off purpose because I could feel the person's purpose around me, and I borrowed it. I borrowed that identity, and for so long that felt like passion. It felt like this special gift of my empathic heart to be able to read people. And this is what I'm supposed to do in business. I'm just this service leader that can conform to what everybody needs. I'm the glue. Um, I think the more I got attached to that idea of my purpose, the more it hurt, uh, and the more alone I felt. And I think the book speaks to this too, from a personal standpoint of how lonely that can be. And I think my heart was so craving a connection with myself, of who really are you? Um, and I think this higher passion and this higher purpose of my heart came out, which really is this capacity of existence, and what is the right action that I know I need to take no matter what. And my heart is screaming at me that even in the face of maybe not being connected with, this is the open, expanded like vibration that I know my heart wants to take. And I think it's that simple, that simple in this passion of my heart just wanting to follow this vibration and larger openness. But I think in that journey, it was really confusing of like, what really is my passion? So now the passion of my heart is when I feel a project that I'm deeply aligned to, like writing. Um, I just get so open, and I feel so happy and joyful, and I don't ever feel alone anymore. I don't feel disconnected because there's something else way down there that I'm connecting to. And if you would have asked me 5 years ago, I would have never given you that answer. I would have probably given you the former one of my passion is ability to connect to anybody and serve their needs. And that wasn't it. Wasn't it?
Mm, wow. I love that so much. So let's talk about the book. Please share with me and the audience the book that you're writing that's going to be, is it published in January? Is that the plan?
January is the plan. Yeah. Horribly Lovely is the title. A love story in broken pieces. I started it 10 years ago. And again, it started out as this, my inner romantic, trying to communicate what it felt like to go through so many romantic relationships and what I learned about myself. And, after each romantic relationship, I would put, here's what I learned, and here's my shadow that came out, and here's how I got triggered. And, as I wrote the book, I realized that it really wasn't a love story or a romantic story about others. It was like, how do I really deeply understand myself, and what does intimacy mean? And I think some of this book was an exploration into the masculine parts of me and the feminine parts of me. And the story I didn't tell at the very beginning with my parents was finding out that there was a twin I had in the womb, and she died in the womb. And how much did that impact this needing to find relationship, and this existential loneliness, and the depression, and all the things I went through that nobody in the business world probably ever knew I was going through. And it's been a way for me to understand more of not just my purpose, but like my soul's journey, and how it always tried to help me understand who I was. So at the end of the day, I think the book really is about me, and how did I claim these parts of me, and how did I claim fatherhood with my three children, but more importantly, how did I claim being a father to myself, and to all those parts that were looking for something to guide them towards purpose.
It sounds like a very brave and honest exploration of your journey into the heart.
Very much so. Yeah. Yeah. Almost like I tell my business partner, I'm like, are you sure you're okay if I publish this? Cause it's incredibly raw and poetic and vulnerable. And I don't hide anything. And yeah, it's all based on how I experienced it. I think Jung always called it the phenomenology. It's, what is my unique experience of my soul and my psyche? And that's different than other people. I mean, we all live on our own realities, and how do we truthfully tell our stories? But I think I found in this truth um, is really where I got to challenge these preconceptions of who I am and what's my purpose, and get to something uh, different.
I'm excited for you. I'm looking forward to reading the book. And I just want to share that when I hear you speak, I just smile because I believe that one of the greatest challenges we all have is showing up as ourselves and being a completely as transparent as we can to show who we truly are. You've written a book. Someone else will do something different. We all have, like you said, we're all very, beautifully unique. And I think it's one of the missing links we have today in business. And like the start of this conversation, you talked about the challenges in business and what if a business could actually hone in and honor each individual and allow them to explore the parts of themselves. You've just done that. Well, you've been doing it. You've written a book about it. And I hope that it's a invitation for people and an example of the journey one can go on to find oneself and be brave enough to just be you. And it doesn't matter if you're writing a personal story, because even if your business partner and potential clients read that book, they're going to love you and know you for who you absolutely are, rather than this facade that actually doesn't show who you are. And we all want to connect. We're human beings. We want to connect with another person. And the only way we can do that is if we actually be ourselves and be open. It doesn't mean you've got to air your dirty laundry, but it's about being brave enough to be ourselves. So I want to congratulate you for writing this book, even though I haven't read it yet. I know it's going to be amazing. And for the listeners who've stayed with us and you've heard Jon talk about what the book is about and why he wrote it, I hope that you're also inspired to think about how you can go into the crevices and the depths of your own selves to finding out where are your shadows? What is holding you back from being completely you, authentically you? That's the journey that we need to go on so we can show up, because that is when we can fully live on purpose. That's my belief.
I think that's beautifully said. I cannot agree with you more. And I think there's I go back to those three words of beauty, artistry, and transformation. And transformation is such a buzzword, but I think until inside you can go in and really be completely honest with yourself, and find the absolute truth as deep as you can go of why have you done the things you've done, and go through all those emotions I spoke about, like the fear, the anger, the sadness and joy, and really go through your entire experience. Like once you do that, you see this authenticity and realness and real vulnerability. And I think if our employees that we value so much have the space to do that, I think it enables our companies to approach their transformations in the same way. That it's not just advertising buzzwords or token strategy or transformational culture strategies that are just recycling the old. I think it enables the entire company to say, let's be radically honest and truthful with ourselves, and let's be vulnerable with what's happening. And I think that is a draw for people. I think people are yearning for that artistry and the beauty and the transformation in a real way. And I think it starts inside ourselves.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. And hopefully this conversation has sparked some of the inspiration for that to happen to our listeners, and go and get Jon's book when it comes out. Jon, how can people get in touch and how can they learn about the book?
Yeah, great question. Horriblylovely.com is the URL you can go to. If you go to it now, before it's published in mid to late January, you can join our community. There's a small token fee. I think it's like 99 cents. And you can go into the community and read the Google Doc version of the book. And you can chat with me there. There's chat rooms. There's also Zooms that we can jump on calls. My hope is it's a place that if you're reading and there's things coming up about your own transformation from a personal standpoint, it may give space for more of us to talk about what were our transformations that were similar, and how can we start that conversation in a real way, it's back and forth. So that's my hope for the community that you can join at horriblylovely.com.
That sounds great. Thank you so much. Now, as we come to an end, I would love for you to share one last thing with our listeners, and that might be just some parting words, some wisdom, or a little piece of advice or a tidbit you'd like to leave them with.
Boy, there's so many things. I would say we're all artists. I've always believed, ever since in the business world, you heard some of the stories. I've always believed we're all designers. I think we're all artists. And I think we have this unique capacity to express something that moves other people. Even if it's a speech you give in the business world, or you're building a PowerPoint deck and there's just a beauty and elegance of how you organized it. I think there's an artistry in every single human being that's coming through in a personal and business world. And just as you think about your purpose, maybe an easier entry point is like, what is the art you love? What are you drawn to? How do you love to express? And be in that space, because I think in that space is where transformation really happens.
Wow. Thank you so much, Jon. Beautiful way to finish off a really, really amazing conversation. I'm so grateful for you, for meeting you, and for you coming on the show today.
Thank you for having me. It's an absolute honor. And thank you for sharing more of your perspectives on things. It's fun to have these conversations about where could business be, especially around the three words, passion, genius, and purpose. I think those are very smart words.
Thank you so much. You're an absolute light of inspiration, and I look forward to being in touch very soon. Thank you. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Mission Activated. If today's conversation resonated with you, please don't keep it to yourself. Share it with someone who needs to hear this. Remember, your mission matters. When you live on purpose, not only do you transform your own life, but you inspire others to do the same. Until next time, stay aligned, keep activated. I'll see you then.